And welcome, John Carroll. This really doesn't sum up everything that you are. I feel like there's so much more to John Carroll, but you're a strategist, you're a growth consultant, you're an author, you're amazing. I've known you for many years. You're great at strategic team building and getting us all back on point, which is so important these days as we go through this very unprecedented time of COVID-19. As small businesses, as we look towards the future and want to get out there in the front of all this again and keep ourselves relevant. So thanks again for moderating another very informative panel discussion.
My pleasure to be here, Rebecca. Thank you so much for getting us up and running and keeping us organized. So I will add my welcome to you to the Sales Pivot. This is our second, I think, it only feels like third, Rebecca. Our second in a weekly series of informal discussions on what's working and what's not working in sales in the midst of and following the COVID-19 event, that unprecedented event we're experiencing. This event is presented exclusively by the Mount Pleasant Chamber of Commerce. As Rebecca said, my name is John Carroll. I serve on the executive board of the Mount Pleasant Chamber of Commerce, and my role here today is as moderator. I'll be introducing our three panelists shortly. I welcome our panelists and those attending the event live, as well as those attending and taking advantage of the recorded event. We are grateful for you taking the time with your Mount Pleasant Chamber of Commerce to join fellow members in looking at real-world, real-time strategies and tactics to help you sell and serve your key clients and customers, as well as new prospects in this post-pandemic business climate. One of the long-standing maxims in selling is that nothing happens until somebody sells something. And that's certainly true for our three guest panelists today. I'll introduce them by name one at a time and ask them to give us a 1-minute introduction, and also ask them for one key benefit of the current disruption has given them. Our first panelist is Frank Frazier. Frank has been in the financial services industry since 1981 and joined Merrill Lynch in 1999. He focuses on developing strategies and recommendations for individuals, their families, and their businesses to help them meet their short and long-term financial goals. Additionally, Frank holds the Chartered Retirement Planning Counselor designation and is a retirement accredited financial advisor. He attended the University of Maryland, where he studied business. Frank is active in several organizations locally and charities, including Habitat for Humanity and Operation Home, and has been active in the Mount Pleasant Chamber of Commerce. Frank, welcome.
Thank you, John. I appreciate it. And as Rebecca mentioned earlier, John is a man that is well known, and he really needs no introduction in our organization. So thank you, John and Rebecca, for helping get this thing going. So yeah, I've basically grown up in the financial world. I got my first job as an 18-year-old and never left the business, and who knew at the time that was going to happen, but it's taken me on a long journey, and I've worked in 3 different metro areas, DC, Charlotte, and Charleston for the last 9. I came to Charleston to be the manager of the Mount Pleasant office for Merrill Lynch and a financial advisor, and that's when I started my financial advisor practice. And one of the groups I found right away when I got to town was the Mount Pleasant Business Association, now the Mount Pleasant Chamber. And I joined, and I'm still a member. I've been a member for 9 years now. And so over the last almost 40 years in the business, we've seen a lot of ups and downs and crazy things happen. We're in one of those times right now. And so bull markets, bear markets, we're in a tough market. I feel for everybody. We have compassion for everybody. But we're walking and talking people through this as we go through this on a daily basis, and things are changing minute by minute, day by day. As many of you noticed yesterday, oil crashed, and we've never seen that before. It actually was trading negatively, and we've never seen things like that before. So with that, I'll turn it back to you, and you can introduce the next panelist.
Thanks, Frank. Our second panelist is Jennifer Maxwell. Jennifer is the Regional Director of Sales for Raines Hospitality. She oversees the sales and marketing for 7 hotels in the Charleston, Mount Pleasant area. Previously, she was the Director of Sales for Hilton Garden Inn, Charleston Mount Pleasant. She joined the Hilton Garden Inn in 2014 prior to the opening of the hotel. Jennifer's accomplishments at the Hilton Garden Inn Charleston Mount Pleasant include being recognized by hotelplanner.com and meetings.com as one of 2015's top 50 group sales managers. In 2016, Jennifer Maxwell was awarded one of 4 Director of Sales Merit Awards for all Hilton Garden Inns in North America. In 2017, she was awarded the Director of Sales Award for Hilton Garden Inns in North America. Jennifer has volunteered with the Mount Pleasant Chamber of Commerce since joining. She has served as the Marketing Committee Chair and Secretary and now Vice President of the Board of Directors. She is also a graduate of the 2017 Charleston Metro Chamber of Commerce's Leadership Program and serves as the chair of the Charleston Chamber East Steering Council. Jennifer double majored in Hospitality and Tourism Management and Business Administration at the College of Charleston. Jennifer, welcome.
Thank you, John, so much for having me and putting this together. Thanks, Rebecca, too. Glad to be here. I've been with Raines Hospitality for a few years now and oversee the Charleston market. We're continuing to grow and have new hotels open, and it's been great to serve our guests. And we have a great team that I work with, and we always enjoy being involved with the Mount Pleasant Chamber of Commerce.
Great, Jennifer. Glad to have you as well. Thank you. Our third panelist is Seth Levy. Seth is an estate planning attorney who specifically practices elder law. Elder law is an emphasis on helping individuals navigate issues regarding incapacity and disability and creating plans to protect assets during life and securely transfer assets after death. Seth practiced law in the New York metropolitan area in the 80s and 90s. He moved to Mount Pleasant for a career change in 1998. When his wife Heidi died of cancer in 2015, he changed his career again. They raised 2 wonderful children who, in their 20s, are now taking up residence in his home due to coronavirus. In a time of great economic upheaval, he experiences joy every day by being able to spend time with them. Seth, welcome.
Thank you, John, and thank you, Rebecca. It is a pleasure to be here. I don't know how I got put into this exclusive company of salespeople, but the truth is I did start my practice in 2017, and I've gone through a gamut of possibilities in building my practice, and I feel a little bit experienced to be able to talk to you about salesmanship. And I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
Thanks, Seth, and thanks to all 3 panelists for taking the time today to share some thoughts and insights. Here's the first question for the panel, and I'll go in the same order that we started with the introductions, and then we'll stagger that for the following questions. So, Frank, I'm going to ask you to field the first question first, which is, what is the single biggest hurdle you expect to face or you're already facing as you continue to sell your products and services in financial services?
Well, the single biggest hurdle is the fear of what's happening in the markets. And as I mentioned earlier, I mean, the markets have fallen a lot. We've had a lot of volatility. People get scared and nervous. And it's a double whammy this time because the markets are reacting to the economic conditions caused by a virus. And so people are not only scared about their retirement or their financial situation, they're scared about their health. And the way that myself, and I'm a teammate of a couple other advisors, and the way that my partners and I face this is we call our clients and we talk to them regularly. And in this latest environment, over the last 5, 6, 7 weeks, we have gone through that cycle of calls multiple times and spoken to each and every one of our clients and our prospects, by the way, many times, and are continuing to do so. So we're not hiding under our desk. We're getting out there and being in front, even though we can't see them in person. We're talking to them a lot.
Thanks, Frank. I appreciate that. And boy, I can't imagine with the climate right now how what you must be hearing, and those certainly are confidential, but we'll get into a little bit of the emotional piece in just a bit. So thank you. Hey, Rebecca, same question. What's the single biggest hurdle you're expecting to face or you're already facing as you continue to sell your products and services?
Well, thank you for the question, John.
Did I say Rebecca?
You did.
Sorry. I'm sorry.
I'm
Rebecca,
like,
I'd love to ask you that question, but right now I'm going to ask Jennifer.
thank you. I was hoping you meant Jennifer, but I was going to come up with something. I can pivot too, you know.
Good job, Rebecca. Well, I would say for the travel industry, really our biggest hurdle has been the uncertainty of everything. We've had several events and different meetings and groups that have had to reschedule weddings or just random events already for the second time. They've rescheduled from March to May, and now they're having to reschedule again. So just, I mean, really the uncertainty, and we don't know when we can exactly help them safely again. So that's just been the biggest challenge that we've been seeing so far.
Jennifer, I've been hearing from certain places that there are certain properties open and others that aren't. What's the status of yours?
All of our Rains properties are open and willing to assist in any way that we can, but there are probably half of the hotels in Mount Pleasant that have been closed, and it has been unfortunate. So lots of staffing changes as well in the hospitality industry, and my hearts go out to everyone affected by this. So
there's an awful lot of people whose livelihoods depend on exactly what you do for a living.
Right.
Yep. Thanks, Jennifer. Seth, that same first question for you. What's the single biggest hurdle you expect to face or you're already facing as you continue to sell your services?
Thank you, John. So compared to Frank and Jennifer, I'm probably in a more fortunate position. Current events have incentivized people to think of my services. People's misfortune seems to have caused the phone to ring. I haven't noticed any drop off in sales. As far as how the virus situation has changed my plans, in 2020, one of my biggest goals was to conduct workshops so that 10 to 20 people could gather in a room and hear more complex concepts regarding estate planning. Estate planning can consist of documents that are crafted according to the rules of the government, or it can consist of more complex plans such as trusts and personal care plans and co-trustees and explanations of intent. So those concepts had me thinking that I was going to give some workshops in 2020. And of course, that's not going to happen anytime soon. So my goal has shifted to recording a workshop and posting it on my website for people to view.
Okay. And Seth, one of the things we were joking beforehand, but you know, you're the guy who's dressed in a suit and tie, and you were saying that's because you've been busy.
All right. Yep. I've been conducting virtual meetings, and as I was going to mention later, neither the legislature nor the governor has revised the requirement to sign estate planning documents in person. So you have to have the witnesses and with the testator, and it has to be notarized in person. Wow.
So your social distancing is even more careful than others because you've got a witness and others do as people sign those documents.
My conference room in my office is about 10 paces from the door. We sit as far apart as we can. Of course, we exchange paperwork. My clients can keep the pens that they use to sign, and we disinfect and clean the room after every use.
Thanks, Seth. I appreciate that. The measures we're having to take these days are incredible and things we would never, I think, have expected. So thank you for that. Second question, we'll start with Jennifer. And Jennifer, what is one key thing you're doing now in the current business climate that prepares and equips you for the work ahead?
I would say just really keeping in contact with all of our current clients, even though we might not be able to help them right now, but just to keep those relationships going. We're all going through this together and just trying to be there for them on a personal level. And I would say just checking in with them personally instead of business, and being cautious and sensitive, just because, you know, certain people are out of work and you might not know that. When they used to be a client, or they might coming back. And really, I just think that how we are handling this, like with our clients, with the cancellations and changes, people are going to look back on how our company is handling that in the future. So just being as flexible and empathetic as we can be, and maintaining our partnerships with people.
Thanks, Jennifer. You know, I think people might get the sense that in the group sales business and hospitality that especially with accommodations, that it's sort of one-off business, but I'm guessing that you've got a good bit of repeat business.
We do. Several repeat corporate clients that are local and national, and same with sporting events too. We have different teams that come back every year just for one specific location. So it's just keeping in contact with those people so they always want to come back to us.
Letting them know you're here when they're ready to come see us, huh?
Exactly.
Wonderful. Jennifer, thank you. Hey, Seth, same question. What's one thing you're doing in the current business climate that prepares and equips you for the work ahead?
So like I mentioned in my previous answer, I am putting my workshop online for people to view, but I'm also trying to chop it down into 6 or 7 digestible 10-minute segments, so that it's so people maintain their attention to the material as it's being presented. As an aside, I've been looking for tracking software to try and figure out how I can tell if somebody's viewed the material by video or not. So if anybody knows anything about that, let me know. Of course, I talked about my signing meetings. They have to be in person, but my initial consultations are totally virtual, or I have an option for them to be virtual. And I happen to use Any Meeting. That's the app that's what the app's called. But I've heard good things about Microsoft Teams.
Okay, great, thanks. So the flexibility of meeting your clients and prospects in the way that you're able to under these circumstances is important.
Absolutely.
Okay, thanks, Seth. Frank, same question. What's one key thing you're doing in the current business climate that prepares and equips you for the work ahead?
Yeah, so we do what I call work the pipeline. As an advisor, I create a pipeline of all the folks that are my clients and that I want to be my clients, and send them information and get out in front. There's a lot of information from a lot of different sources that are coming out, whether you watch the news, whether you watch financial news networks, whether you read research reports about the industry and the things that are going on. People want to hear from us and understand what's happening, why certain things are happening. We all know about the CARE Act and the PPP program that's out there for small businesses and stuff. And there's a lot of information that we've been provided through our organization. We are part of Bank of America, and so they have been out in front, involved in that process, and provided us a lot of information to provide to our clients. So that's really the key thing is, I think Jennifer hit on this, is just communicating with the clients that we have on a regular basis, staying in touch, having compassion, showing that we care, and are here to answer their questions if they have questions, and to help guide them through this whole process, because it's scary for everybody, not just you and me, and it's scary for everyone.
Right. And Frank, you mentioned that in your, in response to the first question, that there's an awful lot of fear right now. And as you explained it so articulately, that the fear is sort of double-edged, right? It's not just what the market is up to, but it's this health threat. You've got people that, as clients, I'm guessing, that also have business interests and equity, and they've got that to be concerned about as well.
Yeah, so a number of my clients are business owners, and they are concerned, and every one of them that I know of has applied for some help from the PPP program to help get them through this, and several of them have called me or emailed me asking what I know about this program, and thankfully, as I said earlier, our organization has provided us with a vast amount of information about it. I'm not an expert, so-called, but I know enough to help, answer questions that they've had, and that's one of the things I've been able to provide to them.
Frank, thank you. And then Jennifer, same question. What's one key thing you're doing in the current business climate that prepares and equips you for the work ahead?
John, I already answered that question.
Oh, I'm sorry. We started with you. My bad. I apologize.
It's okay.
What day is it today?
I don't know.
That's not a fair question anywhere around these days. So thank you all for your responses on that. Seth, let's go to next question. What one thing would you recommend that others who are in sales, whose livelihood depends on selling their products or services, what one thing would you recommend that others in sales do or don't do as we live and work in the current new normal?
Sure. So I don't pretend to be a business coach or a sales coach. But that being said, I have more than one thing. I think you need to be ultra focused when you conduct meetings in a virtual fashion, or even as we're doing this. I think that you're meeting people for the first time, and they're strangers. So, and oftentimes all you see is their head. So, you can't read body language or get any other clues from that. And you see their background, and you don't want to be distracted about that. So you just need to focus and be laser focused on what you're trying to achieve. And of course, you want to be calm. Like Frank said, it's a very uncertain time. People are nervous, and you need to be calm and get to know them somehow as best as whatever fits into your personality. I want to make them smile and laugh. And if I can get them to do that, I think they'll pay attention to me. But you can ask them open-ended questions about their lives, about something you might have in common, and keep their attention. I have a whiteboard that I put up about 2 weeks ago, and I sometimes turn around and write on it, and I think that's useful. I have also ordered a document reader. It's kind of like a webcam on a stick, hovers over a document, and you can write and project that onto your screen. So other than that, I think the open-ended questions, you need to be acknowledge their answers, encourage them. And listening skills are just so much more important now because you can't see body language. So you've got to listen to people and what they say and their inflection, and sometimes you have to parrot it back to them. You have to acknowledge what they're saying and make sure that, you want them to make sure that you get it. You want them to know that you get it. And so listening and answering, those are important things. I think the only other thing, and sometimes I'm in a situation where clients get emotional sometimes, and you've got to acknowledge those emotions in a forum like this, in a media like this. So you have to acknowledge those emotions and recognize them.
Thanks, Seth. So empathy comes in very handy, especially in these sorts of times.
That's right.
Thank you, sir. Frank, over to you with that same question. What one thing would you recommend that others in sales do or don't do as we live and work in the current new normal?
Well, I would say for starters, stay in touch, and being sympathetic and empathetic and compassionate is key. And the other big thing is to listen to their story a little bit, understand what that person is facing. And it's all this thing's different for everybody, and so let's listen and find out what's going on in their world before we start, making suggestions or comments about what we think they should do in regards to what we're working towards. Find out as much information as possible about them.
So what I'm hearing from you is that listening is equally important with your clients.
Absolutely, and they don't want me to just talk to them and tell them about everything and how it's going. They want to provide feedback and tell me what's going on in their world and how they're feeling and all that kind of thing as well. So yes, absolutely.
Okay, Frank, thank you. And then same question, Jennifer. What one thing would you recommend that others in sales do or don't do as we live and work in the current new normal?
I would just say that if you have a sales and marketing plan for 2020 to review that and update it. Just because our environment has changed, some of the selling techniques are obviously going to change and set new goals for the rest of the year. In some aspects in my industry, it's kind of going to be like opening a hotel all over again. Even though we're already open, we have to figure out how to ramp back up, and it's not going to be the same as it was at the beginning of this year, just because so much has changed. So really just looking at that and having a plan in place so you can ramp back up quickly.
Great recommendations, Jennifer. And it really does almost require a complete review of what the plans were, doesn't it?
Yes.
That can be difficult, especially if you put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into your plan like many of us do. That can be a big challenge, and we grieve, I think among other things, we grieve the fact that, man, I had this killer plan for 2020 and it's right out the window.
Right.
So I've got these other things I've got to do. This is where we invite Rebecca. I'll get the names right this time. This is where we invite Rebecca back in and see what feedback or questions from those we might have who are attending us live in the event. Rebecca, what do we have?
Well, I have a question. I thought it was very apropos when Seth and Frank talked about listening skills. And John, you and I have talked about that as well, getting something together about continuing to emphasize that importance. For someone who, like myself, who's type A and a bit of a control freak, how do you find that presence of mind, that quiet place, so that you are listening to others and yourself? Because you almost get to the point where you're almost frozen sometimes, right? We don't want to get to that point where we can't move forward because there's so much unknown. So how do you find that quiet time, you as panelists? Is there a certain time of the day that you kind of think about, all right, here's what I need to do today, but I realize the world is changing almost every hour? How do you find that quiet place so that you can also move forward productively?
Thanks, Rebecca. Let's toss that around. Frank, how about you?
Yeah, so the best time for me, there's two times for me, personally, excuse me. One is early in the morning. My wife and I get up very early every day, and so we're up and about early, and I do some checking of things, emailing, meditation, other things early in the morning. So it starts there, and I'm checking my list of things on my calendar. That's one of the first things I do when I wake up, to remind myself, hey, you've got these things on your calendar for today. So that's kind of my way to do it. And another way that I do it is I'm usually the last one in my office when I'm in the office during regular normal times. I'm here late a lot, and that last, I'd say, hour or so of the day is another time where I have time to do those kinds of things and plan for tomorrow. And, you know, I put something on my calendar every Friday to do that too, to plan for next week's schedule. So I do it multiple times. It's not just one time. And it's always changing and adjusting. It's never the same exact thing.
Right. But it sounds like you're able to reasonably easily access that quiet time when you need it.
I would say reasonably most of the time. You have to work at it. You have to, you have to make a conscious effort to do it.
Right. It'd be easy enough to just write email all day long, wouldn't it, Frank?
That's right.
Yep. Thank you. Jennifer, same question. What about the quiet time?
I'm like Frank, I'm an early riser, so I like first thing in the morning to get all my thoughts together, and I'm big about to-do lists and adding reminders on my calendar for follow-ups so I don't forget anything.
It sounds like a good practice and habit to be in. Seth, how about you? Quiet times.
I'm a very early riser. I'm having lunch by 7 a.m. No, but seriously, it's important to be healthy and organized, of course. I see the same guy walking up and down the street in the morning in my neighborhood. I wonder who that could be, John. But actually, Rebecca, I thought you were going to ask a different question, and I'll answer the one I thought you were going to ask, which is how do you listen to people when your mind is spinning, when you're thinking of so many things? And I just repeat to myself, it's not about you. I'm talking to myself. It's not about you until it's about you. So I try and listen to people until my input is really needed.
Interesting. So Seth, the question that you answered, at least for me, is how do you get your mind quiet? We were talking about quiet time in general terms. You're talking about quieting your mind so that you can be present and listen fully and completely to whoever is speaking.
That's right.
Wonderful. Thank you. I appreciate that. Rebecca, thanks for that question. That was a great one for us to tackle. Rebecca, let's see if anybody else has chipped in or if there's any thoughts you have before we go around the panel one more time.
No, I really appreciate everybody's time. You all are amazingly talented folks, and your time is valuable. And thank you so much for doing this for the Mount Pleasant Chamber. I want to remind our listeners that on our website, John, the very first week we started the webinar, you did one called Taking Control of Your Day and Your Life. And that's a great one. If you haven't had an opportunity to view that or listen to, I encourage you to do that, because it's something that in my mind, as we have gone through this journey together, that it is important to think about what can I control, but what can I not control, and putting that all in perspective. So thank you again, John, for doing that. And these Sales Pivot webinars are incredibly helpful, insightful as well. I know we want to do kind of a final round with everybody. I do want to remind folks that this Thursday we have one on cybersecurity at 10 o'clock Thursday morning. So I'm getting a lot in my inbox right now about the benefits of Zoom, the perils of Zoom, and everything else out there. So we're going to be talking about that with an expert on Thursday at 10. That's really all I have to add. Just to thank you again, John, Carroll, for your amazing leadership and facilitating these panelists today. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Rebecca. Let's see if we can get one final thought from each of our panelists. Jennifer, let's start with you, please.
I would just say stay positive. Like I said, everyone's going through this together, so stay positive, and the sun will be shining on the other side soon.
Okay, Jennifer, thank you. Seth, final thought?
So I would just say I'm trying to make the best of an unusual situation. My kids are home. This is a time of my life that I would have never had without the virus.
Okay, thanks, Seth. And Frank, final thought?
Yeah, I agree with Jennifer. I would say just be positive and one foot in front of the other every single day. Just keep on moving.
Okay. Frank, thank you. We thank you, Jennifer, Frank, and Seth, for your time and participation. We thank all of our chamber members with us live and those catching us on the recorded event. And a big thank you to Rebecca Imholtz and Tamara Cornwall for keeping the Mount Pleasant Chamber out in front and serving our members and the community. Thank you and goodbye.
Thank you
Thanks,
all.
everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.